Hey there, Emmanuel here, welcome back to the Tech with Tourist channel. In this video, I want to show you my favorite new TUI for using AI agents, and that is the PyMono project. Now, this is a bit of a different project than what you're probably used to, and that's because this is not only one package, only one way of doing things. It is rather, instead of being that, a combination of different tools that end up being used as a TUI, as you can see here. So currently, I'm doing here a extension that I'm implementing to be able to have a set of to-do lists that is synced with JJ inside of a project, and I'm going to share that with you in a later video. But in this one, I want to stick to the Py coding agent, and the reason that I actually keep forgetting what the name actually is because the name is a bit confusing and there are multiple packages. But as you can see, it is pretty much something that resembles what I would say more on the Codex or Claude code side instead of something like OpenCode. And actually, even though I called it a TUI, it is more of a CLI because it renders all of its text to the terminal itself, and all of the scroll back happens inside of the terminal. That is something that I actually prefer over the approach that OpenCode takes, and there's a lot of different things about this terminal that I think, or rather about this TUI, that I think that are being done much better when compared to OpenCode. So I sort of want to share that with you. So let's jump here into the GitHub repo, and I'm going to leave a link in the description down below so you can take a look at it. But essentially, the thing that I like about this is, first of all, it has a lot of opinions about what it does and what it doesn't. It is very minimal and it is very extensible. So this sort of reminds me of my path that I took from using VS Code, then using Vim, and finally ending up on NeoVim itself. And I sort of went from Claude Code, very nice interface, nice to use, but I sort of felt constrained, first of all, because it is not open source. That means that I cannot configure it to its maximal extent. And then I went to OpenCode, much better because it is first of all open source. Then it has much more extensibility built into it, and all of the code is built with this idea of extensibility. But I think that I'm landing here on PyMono, and I'm going to stick with this tool. I don't really see myself changing in the near future because I'm really enjoying a few aspects about it. So let's start here by reading the documentation, and as you can see, instead of being only one package, it is multiple packages that end up leading here to the coding agent. So first we have PyAI. This is a unified multi-provider LLM API that integrates with OpenAI, Anthropic, and Google. So this is the part of the packages here that sort of communicates with the LLM. Then we have the PyAgent core. This is the agent runtime with tool calling and state management. So this has a separate package only for the agent itself, so just doing the tool calls and handling the state. I'm going to skip this one as the last one. So we have here a Slack bot that delegates messages to the PyCoding agent. I'm also going to skip this one because I don't really use it. Then we have the PyTUI. So this is the code only for the terminal user interface, only for the things that are displayed inside of the terminal, how it handles things like not having flickers, which is something that Claude Code, for example, is very famous for flickering all of the time. And for example, if I change here the zoom inside of the terminal, it handled that very well. So there's nothing here that was rendered incorrectly, and that's something that cannot be said for Claude Code. So the rendering is, I would say, terrible when compared here to Py. And then we have the web UI. I also didn't even take a look at this, honestly, and this one also I didn't take a look at. So now I'm going to jump here into the coding agent, and this is actually the thing that you're going to install to be able to run the Py coding agent. As you can see, there's a lot of things here inside of the table of contents, and I could have gone ahead and showed you all of this, but instead I'm going to skip over. I recommend again that you take a look at the documentation. I'm going to leave a link in the description below, and I want to skip here to the philosophy part because I think this is the idea that I want to share, and most of the reason that I'm so in love with this tool for using AI agents. So like this says here, Py is opinionated about what it won't do, which is something very incredible, I think. For example, NeoVim is very good because it doesn't do everything, doesn't try to handle everything under the sun. Instead, it relies on plugins, it relies on its extensibility to be able to provide all of these features, and that's why it is so incredible, because not only do you start with something that is not bloated and then you can only, or rather you only add the things that you actually need to use, but more than this, it actually allows for much more customizability, extensibility, and a lot more power. So it is simple when you start using it, but you can start adding tools as you need and it becomes much more powerful. So this is the case with NeoVim, and I also think that it is the case here with Py. So these are intentional design decisions to minimize context bloat and avoid anti-patterns. So first, it doesn't have any kind of MCP. Instead, it relies on CLI tools, which I think is amazing because MCPs, servers, and clients makes a lot of sense to use them in tools like ChatGPT, the web interface, or the Claude interface also on the web. But for using it on the CLI, we already have CLI tools and we already have the ability to write code. So it's much better, I think, to just rely on SDKs. And I'm going to show you how I'm doing that in just a second. But just relying on SDKs to like connect to it via extensions, or instead just use CLI tools because we are already inside of the terminal. So it doesn't really make a lot of sense to use MCPs. They're basically like a abstraction over the CLI that just adds a lot of complexity that we don't really need. Then also it doesn't have subagents by default. Now that's the important thing, because if you want, you can spawn Pi instances via Tmux, or you can build your own subagent tool. So even though it doesn't come with subagents by default, you can build your own, and I've actually went ahead and done that already. So you can accomplish this by using extensions. So I'm going to go over here the list, and I'm going to talk about extensions because that is one of the most like my favorite thing about it. So it also doesn't have permission pop-ups, so that is something that is nice to me, because all of those tools that I've mentioned previously, Claude Code and Codex and OpenCode. So I think OpenCode doesn't have any kind of permissions by default. You can enable them, so it is no permissions by default, but it still has them. And Codex has permissions, and Claude Code as well by default. And I always would have like run the YOLO command or flag in Codex, and the dangerously skip permissions in Claude Code. So here I don't even need to do that. And also you can like run this in a container or build your own extension. Then it doesn't have a plan mode. Again, very nice. I know that this might sound weird because in Claude Code, and even when I moved to OpenCode, I wasn't even using plan mode anymore because I was doing what this says here: gather context in one session, write plans a file, and then start fresh for implementation. If you go watch my previous videos, I talked about the Ober Superpowers project, and that is a great project that sort of allows you to have different kinds of skills for Claude Code mainly, but it also works with other tools. And I've discovered this very nice workflow by using this project, where I just go from brainstorming, then I go to the design writing, so it writes a design document, and finally we go to writing a plan. So it has like specific skills for doing this, and this means that I would have just gone ahead and like create a plan based on the ideas that I have, and then in the end I would have just like create a new session and then start writing or executing, I should say, that plan. So again, watch the previous videos if you want to see how I was doing that. But because I was like following this workflow and this way of working, I wasn't even using the plan mode anymore, because I would just like inside of one session say, okay, let's start a brainstorming session, let's see how this should look like, and then I would go to writing a design document, and then finally the implementation plan, and then start a new session and go from there. So I think that this is very good because it doesn't add this like plan mode on top, and then the plan mode usually has certain kinds of like system prompts or prompts themselves that are always managed by the CLI or the TUI that you're using, and I don't really like that. I like to be in control, so I much rather prefer to have like a quote-unquote plan mode, which is simply like a skill that I invoke. I say to the model, okay, here's how we should like build a complete plan, a plan that's actually good, and then it gets stored in the like file system, which is eventually what even Claude Code, then even OpenCode ended up doing. So the model just interacts with the file system, it writes the plan there. So we're just essentially adding like again here I think like abstraction on top that is not really necessary. It also doesn't have built-in to-dos, which is what I'm doing. I think that I don't really agree with this, but the cool thing is that this is very minimal, it is very extensible, so if you don't agree with some of these things, you can just build something into it. I'm not really sure if it is possible to build a plan mode, but I'm not even going to bother with that, honestly. It says here that they confuse models, so you can use it to do that empty file or build your own with extension. That is exactly what I'm doing. Also, no background bash. You can use Tmux to run things in the background, which I think is a very good decision, and it gives you like full observability and direct interaction, and I usually don't even bother with it. So you can also read here, apparently there's a blog post which I wasn't honestly even aware about. You can go ahead and also read this, and yeah, this is basically all of the things that I really like about it. And now let's jump here to the extension. So extensions are TypeScript modules that extend Pi's behavior. So use cases, some examples here: custom tools, register tools callable by the LLM with a custom UI and rendering. Very nice. This, I think it is amazing that we are able to build tools for our like AI agent, that we are able to like basically we're able to build anything. So if you think about like the questions and answers, like that thing that pop up that shows inside of OpenCode and also shows inside of Claude Code. You can build that with with an extension, and you can build your own. You can build something that is like exactly what you need. One thing that comes to mind is how, for example, even OpenCode and Claude Code have a limit to the amount of options that the LLM can create. So let's say that the LLM invokes the questions tool, let's call it that, and it adds 4 different options or the other where you type something. Each one of the options need to have like a maximum of like 12 words or 80 characters. I'm not even sure, but it has a limit. Maybe you don't agree with that. Maybe you think that it is just fine to have options that are longer because that's the way you work. I think that you shouldn't be stuck with that. In the case of OpenCode, obviously you can clone the repo or fork rather the repo and edit that, but I still think that is much better to have this simplicity that we start from and then extend it from there. Custom commands also amazing. So these extensions can hook into the CLI or the TUI itself and add custom commands. Event interception, so it can block tool calls, modify the results, customize compaction. All of these things are just amazing. And then state persistence, store data in session, reconstruct on reload or fork, external integrations like file watchers, webhook, and Git checkpointing, and then custom UI, full TUI control from tools, commands, or event handlers. Now, as you can see, it is very complex and very like complete, I should say, instead of complex, the amount of things that you can actually customize inside of this TUI. So it comes with basically nothing, I would say. All of the things that it comes with are very simple, like write, edit, read, and bash, I think so. And besides this, you are the one that creates everything. Now, my reasoning for actually believing that this is the best way of doing things is that we all have very specific workflows. When you are working with an LLM, when you are working with an LLM or working with a AI agent, there's a very specific way that you might prefer to do things. And if you're stuck to a tool that doesn't allow you to customize that workflow, it just becomes very burdensome and you're needed to adapt to the tool rather to the tool adapting to you. And this is exactly the reason that I use NeoVim. Instead of me needing to do things the way that VS Code does, instead of me needing to adapt the tool adapt to me instead. And like NeoVim comes with basically nothing, and I have my own workflow, my own way of doing things. And someone else that is using NeoVim might have a completely different way of doing things. I use Telescope. I mainly use that to search things. I like to use Fugitive or Git. There's other people that like a different workflow, maybe integrate lazy Git inside of the NeoVim like window. There's people that like I use Harpoon to be able to navigate files. There's people that don't use that. They just like to have the tabs on the top and see where they're at. I mean, there's a lot of different workflows that you might prefer, and I think the power in this very minimal and extensible tool is really there, just in the simplicity that they have. So now I want to show you here sort of like the code, you register tools. So I'm going to invite you to actually take a look at them yourself. And now let's jump here and see what I was working on. So like I said, my setup currently is very minimal. So I'm going to apply and show you that I have 3 different skills currently: searching the web using skills and writing skills. And then I have 2 different extensions: exit search and using skills. So this is a extension that essentially hooks a system prompt or appends to the system prompt a set of instructions on how to use skills. And again, amazing the fact that I can create an extension that does this, can do this like programmatically. This means that we can hook different kinds of things, even depending on the type of project that we are inside. Let's say that you scan and you see, okay, this is a npm project. It has a package.json. So let's add a hook into the system prompt that it should always use, for example, pnpm, something like that. Now, this is obviously not, honestly, not a very good example, but you get the point. You have this ability to hook into everything that's happening inside the TUI. So all of these skills that I'm creating here are very much inspired by the Ober project, Superpowers. I'm also going to leave a link in the description down below for that. And I'm sort of like getting inspiration from that project instead of just cloning it, since I think it is very like focused on Claude Code, and I'm trying to get inspiration from it, trying to get some cues and some ideas from it, and trying to build my own set of skills here. So like I said, I also use this extension to search the web. So instead of using the exa MCP, I have a extension that I've created. I honestly didn't even create it manually. So if I jump here into this, let's see here the extension. So this is the one. We have the source. This can even have a package.json things with like packages installed. And here I've imported the exa JavaScript TypeScript SDK, and then we have here everything that was created. So see here. Okay, so we have the text, and I just want to see here where exa actually is called. So we have here search and content, we have search, and we can create all sorts of like workflows here. For example, you can invoke this extension only from a sub agent that searches the web and then does itself like a summary of the contents. This is an example of something that could be done. I think this is actually the way that Claude Code does things under the hood. I remember seeing that a couple of days ago on Twitter. So let's imagine that instead of just doing the search with exa and not having like the context be polluted with that, usually it gets very like nasty with these kinds of tools, we can just invoke a sub agent. That sub agent uses this extension by default, and then it reads from the like response that comes from exa, and it just like summarizes the meat, the core of what we actually need. Again, all of this is possible because of this way of being able to extend this tool. So I'm just again in love with this, and I'm going on a lot on this video, rambling about different ideas because I really am very excited about it. And this is the exact kind of workflow that I was searching for this entire time with Claude Code. First of all, trying to like use different kind of hacks here and there to get around like the lack of, let's say, extensibility. And now with OpenCode, also very good, I think, much better obviously than Claude Code in terms of extensibility. But now here with this tool, I'm really like I feel like I've landed inside on something that is great in my opinion. So yeah, instead of having the MCP server, we simply have an extension for doing exa searches. We could even have a extension that does searches inside of exa and context 7 at the same time for the same query, for example. We can even like be able to pass a argument into it depending on the type of thing that we want to use as search. So a lot of things that we could do here with extensions. And now to conclude the video, I just want to show you here something that is the thing that I'm working on right now. I've realized that Codex actually benefits a lot from having a to-do list, and when I have like a set of like very simple instructions, I feel that it is much better under like a very specific to-do list that it needs to adhere to, and if not, it sometimes like jumps certain steps. So my idea was, okay, I want to build like a to-do list very similar to what is inside of Claude Code or OpenCode or Codex, and I want to like tie it to JJ because JJ is the like Git alternative, actually uses Git under the hood that I've been using, and I feel that it would be a great idea. I'm still like exploring this, but I feel like it would be a great idea to be able to create a set of tasks, and then we mark one task as working, as active, and it creates a new bookmark. And then we create a bunch of different commits, and all of those commits are related to that task. And if we wanna go back, we can see exactly where that task, like where we left that task, and we can like say, okay, I'm now on task 3. There's a problem here. Let me actually revert back the first task. And when I revert back to the first task, actually I still get all of those things still there because I'm using JJ, so I can just use the edit command. This is the edit like workflow basically, and it means that I'm able to sort of just give these tools to the AI agent to go back, try different things, come back to the or go forward to the task number 3, for example, and sort of have this ability to do this. And I've even thought of this idea that I still also want to sort of explore, and I want to do a video in the future also about it, where if I'm using a skill that I'm going to create in the future called executing plans. Again, this is also inspired by the superpowers project from Obra, but I want to create sort of a skill that is inspired by like that project, executing plans. But I want to add there something that says, okay, when you are executing this plan at the start, you need to create a list of to-do items, of tasks based on all of the items inside of this plan, and then you are only allowed to stop your loop once all of them are completed. So like the agent knows that it is executing a plan according to like the skill, and then it will be able to call like the creation of all of the tasks with a certain argument that says, for example, lock or forced or something like that, and that will force the model to need to complete all of the tasks before completing the loop basically, and that will help basically Codex adhere to a plan much better because it will like have this necessity way of doing that. So yeah, I'm basically very like pumped about this project, and that's why really I wanted to share that with you. So I'm also going to leave a link in the description down below to the Twitter or X account of the creator of this project if you want to check like his stuff, and I really recommend that you download it and you give it a try. One thing that I really want you to keep in mind is that once you start using it, there's going to be a lot of things missing that you expect there to be, but don't be scared by that. Instead, try to just think, okay, this is how I like to work. This is like the ideas that I have around AI agents. Maybe you like the sort of minimal setup. Maybe you have like some crazy ideas that you want to implement, but whatever the case might be, I see this as really the future, because tools first like Claude Code that are closed source, that is just going into the trash for me forever. I'm never going honestly back to that tool because it is closed source, so I cannot implement any of these things. So I cannot implement extensions, I cannot implement like basic functionality inside of a tool, and as a developer that is very frustrating for me. That's why I use NeoVim. That's why I think that it is superior. So going to leave like a link somewhere around here for my video on why I think that NeoVim is indeed better than VS Code, and my arguments there are basically the same here. Like there's extensibility, it is very like a slim tool that doesn't use a lot of like resources. Claude Code like magically is able to use a lot of resources inside of the terminal, which is something that is very hard to do. So yeah, and this extensibility is just amazing. I'm going on here again and again, but I really like this tool, and as you can see, like the thing that I also enjoy is the fact that I can search here. So if I do here Tmux mode, then I go into this, I go into scroll mode. Now if I edit this, I'm able to search all of this with NeoVim, which is very nice. So I'm able to go into the scroll back and search for things without having to use like the search functionality that these two is provided with. And that was the case with OpenCode, which was something that like bothered me a lot. So this is what I feel like Claude Code should have been and could have been, because if Claude Code first decided to open source their project and just build something very minimal like this and very extensible, I think that they would have like taken over. And yeah, I'm very excited about this tool, and it works. It doesn't crash. When I select a model, that's the model that it uses, so everything works perfectly, and now I'm able to build like this building block upon it. So yeah, this is it. I'm going to now really like finish this video, because I apologize, this one was much longer, but I'm really excited about it, and I'm going to continue making a lot more videos. Maybe I'm going to do one just about here the to-do plan or the to-do like extension. That is probably going to be the next one. So thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you on the next video.